Welcome to the April 2025 LAPPG meeting. Thank you so much for being here. We are super psyched for our presentation tonight, Protect, Collaborate, and Create, a Smarter Approach to Media Storage. Our presenter tonight is Kat Mill, Technical Account Manager for Synology. Welcome, Kat. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you everybody for having me here. Today, we're going to be kind of talking about utilizing Synology products in both protecting your data, collaborating, and kind of getting everything in one place. So that way you aren't dealing with the data sprawl. We're going to talk about common workflow challenges. We're going to talk with Ash Thorp and see his solutions and what he's using with our products. I talked with him last week. He was unable to make it today, so we did a little pre-interview. So I'll put my camera off when that happens so it doesn't look weird that I'm here. Then we're going to talk about some practical solutions and tips that you can utilize, as well as I'll demo some stuff live on a couple of different units that I have, including my own personal unit that I do production work on myself. So a little bit about me, actually, just as a heads up. So I work at Synology with a specialty in media and entertainment, but that's because I went to school for audio engineering and production back in the day, and have also done technical consulting for video production shops in the Seattle area. So I've done a little bit on the tech side, a little bit on the audio side, and I've done some freelance video production. But so I've been there, and I know the struggles that come with having a big stack of hard drives. And this is not my desk, but I know many of you have very similar desks to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we deal with these scattered drives, how to deal with long file transfers, how to deal with slow remote access, and how to deal with the stress of making sure that you always have the right copy, because we all know that we have that final, really final, totally final, I swear, V7 dot final. So we're going to talk about getting all of that corralled. So what we want is we want centralized storage. We want to be able to access it remotely. We want to have that backup and data protection built into the platform itself. And we want that to be able to run 24/7 so we can access it whenever we need. That's why I kind of came up with this idea about the 3 C's, which is kind of what we were talking about, is consolidate, collaborate, and catastrophe protect. Slightly awkward to get that last C in there, but we want to do a catastrophe protection because things are getting ever more and more dangerous these days with keeping your data. So we want to make sure that it's safe. So Ash came to us and said, before it was just a stack of hard drives with random labels. Then he figured out about NAS. And then he did a deep dive into NAS and what that was. And he ended up finding us and then working with us. And he feels like this was this moment where he went from being an amateur to being a professional with his data management. So I'm actually going to go to our next slide, which is going to be our video. So I'm going to pop off the screen here. So let me go ahead and throw to myself.
Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. If you could tell me just a little bit about yourself and what you do.
My name is Ash Thorp. I'm known in the creative film community and AAA video games as a user interface designer, art director. I do many different roles, and I run a studio called Alt Creative, and it's been a really interesting journey, and I've had a really fantastic experience working on various projects, and it's been a really fun process. Probably more of the work that I'm most known for recently is designing the latest Batmobile and the latest Batman film. But I worked on a slew of different films in different capacities, with just helping production and taking the words from the script and then applying them to the screen. And that's pretty much, what I do in somewhat of a nutshell.
That's awesome. That's a lot of really cool stuff and fun to get kind of integrated and put your polish on everything in like your vision. So that's really fun. So could you walk us through just some of your typical demands and like what your pipeline is for when you're doing your creative projects? Like kind of give us like the lowdown on your workflow.
Yeah, workflow changes and depends on the project they ask, but most of what I do is very data heavy, meaning that there's a lot of gigabytes of data that goes through and has to be saved. And a lot of the stuff that I work on needs to be encrypted, saved, or very safe because it's mostly under an NDA with large companies. They're very strict. And so when I'm working, say, with a team that I grow and build with, we'll work independently on different places, but everything comes back to me. And the files have to be saved. And then most importantly, I need to have redundancy and backups just in case something goes wrong because you never know. So a lot of the times, the most typical projects from start to end will run a 1 to 2 to sometimes 3 terabytes entirely for that project itself, simply because of the resolution and the depth of these files. Are massive usually. And we do iterations as well. So as we build and develop the projects, we'll start with like one stage, and then it'll kind of compound as we go through the process of establishing what it needs to be. So heavy data, redundancy is needed, and security. So it's like kind of all of those things combined. And it's pretty intense data wise.
Yeah, that is a lot of data to manage. And also, I've worked with a lot of people in the industry who have a very similar thing. They're working with highly sensitive content, so that security, making sure that everything is resilient and redundant is a really huge thing. So you've utilized like Synology products and like everything to kind of like help achieve those goals. What was your process like before?
Yeah, I would say before using Synology tools, most of my workflow was like most of my counterparts or colleagues in the space, which is just stacks of hard drives with like random labels with just, when you do this stuff, you don't think about, oh, I have to save all these things and then I have to be then professional about it and all of these things. You just don't really consider them because you're so busy with the task at hand, which is creating these worlds. So before it was just, those little orange hard drives, and then like that turned into those big stackable kind of horizontal versions and so on and so forth, until I realized that there was this thing called NAS. And then I did a deep dive and I realized, oh, there's this redundancy thing. And that's how I discovered Synology. Yeah.
That's really cool. And I'm glad that you found this, because that's something that, even me, I have a whole bunch of like old Western Digital, like my book, like 12 terabytes that I got on sale at Costco.
Yeah.
And then like, I just have like multiples of those that like I had to then like put all of that together and consolidate everything into like one single place.
Yeah. That's difficult to do. It takes a lot of discipline.
No, that's for sure. Which that actually segues kind of into our next question is like, how have you developed like your own system for doing that consolidation?
Yeah, what I've done is I've kind of broken my main energy, like where I put my energy, into pools basically. So I have my client work, which I separate from my personal work. And then I have a separate personal kind of place where I put like, say, movies I have or music I have or whatever. And so everything kind of has its own category. And so the client stuff stays in one place, and then my personal stuff stays in one place, and I kind of separate it that way. When I build up a new project, I have a very robust template that I copy and paste. So if I'm starting a new project, I have a template with file folder systems that's all very logic based. So 5 years from now or 10 years, I can go back instantly and know the logic. Oh, this is a project. It was used in this file. I was using this thing. And so I can easily go back right into that file instantly, because there's nothing worse than, for me, there's nothing worse than time crime. It's like wasting time doing things that I shouldn't be doing.
Right.
I'm extremely rigid on those kind of things. And so having a robust system that's modular is really great. And I'm continually sharpening that. I'm adding little things to the master file. That's the template, and then kind of replicating that. So when I take on a new project, the first thing I do is duplicate that template, rename it whatever the project is, and then I start to fill that in basically. So if I'm using Cinema 4D, I have Cinema 4D file stuff or whatever. And then I just kind of expand on that and build the path. It makes it so that it's extremely robust. I can go back in time and it's easy just to access things, which is really the key. Because that's all you want with data, because as we know, as we grow in the digital space, we have a trail, and keeping your trail organized and clean so you can go back if you need to is essential. And that's literally why I decided to use Synology and like change from being an amateur with my data, but to becoming a professional with my data.
That's awesome. I definitely identify with that as well. I know that I ran into this difficulty, and so some of the other people in the audience might be wondering, how did you develop your initial template? It sounds like you've kind of evolved it over time, but during that consolidation process, like, how did you kind of like come up with your template or figure that out?
I had a colleague of mine, his name is Michael Wrigley, and I had an online school that I had made with some colleagues called Learn Squared. He had designed a class that was about production in that he had this template system that he had built and developed. Before that, I had somewhat of an inkling of what that is, and he really sharpened that and helped me see exactly what it needed to be, because before that, we were doing productions together, and I didn't realize his file system was so robust until he taught it to me. And so I took what he had taught, applied it to mine, and then pressure tested it over a couple projects. When I'm in the middle of a project, it's extremely intense, and I'm like all in and everything is involved. So I was testing the system, and then I would check years later. I would come back and see if I could find the file within a couple minutes from not seeing that file or being familiar with it for 5 years or so. Then that was how I knew that the structure was strong. It was a logic-based system. So it's like, if you have a certain file type or a certain way, you can instantly go back to it because it all follows, I would say, like a tree of logic. You know, you start from the trunk of it, and then you spread out. So, and then it goes out to the leaves, and then, you know, that's the methodology. But I'd say that, and then all of the robust tests, and then applying my own methodologies through it and refining that over time is really the key. And always knowing that it can change and refine, but getting the main principle there is really the key. The file structure, order, and understanding exactly where you want things to go. Marie Kondo, she wrote this book called the life-changing Tidying Up.
Tidying Up. Yeah.
So why not apply that to digital? And so I did the same kind of thing, which is if you're going to put your clothes away, fold them nicely, and then do it so you can access them nicely, and then have pride in where your things go. And if you don't need it, then don't use it. And so I think it was a serendipitous moment reading that, doing that in the physical space, and then also doing that in the digital space and cleaning things up as I was going and tidying things up. It's so easy to just make things and then make a mess. When I see a desktop and it's all the files, it freaks me out, because I'm like, I don't ever work like that. My desktops are always the color black, and then I only allow myself like 3 or 4 things on there, because I'm constantly pushing things off of the desktop into the NAS in a clean, organized manner. So if I need to come back to it. I also have tangential thinking spots where I can be spazzy and throw random things in, and I call it BTS, behind the scenes. And then that's where I just dump thousands of things into if I need to.
I think that's called my stuff folder.
Stuff, BTS.
Very descriptive. Yeah.
You kind of need, if you're built in a culture where clutter is allowed, then you need a place like that to feel natural. And I felt like that was it was like a compromise I was willing to make, whereas all the other files are very rigid and clean. So that's a place where I can just dump everything. Usually when I work, I'm taking screenshots because I use a Mac OS. You can constantly screenshot. I know you can do it in Windows as well. And so I'm constantly taking photos of the process of things. And then, so at the end of the day, it all goes to my desktop, and then I clean my desktop off and shift it off and push it all to the NAS, which has redundancy. And then I have we'll get into it, but I also have redundancy on that as well.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that kind of like sums up that consolidation process really well, is to keep things on track. It's like pulling all of this data into the same place, having an organizational system with which you can put it into. But then, of course, like the real challenge is keeping that up to date, making sure that you're following through to kind of keep that system in place so it doesn't get too messy. So very much the the life-changing magic of tidying up and
That's
keeping
it.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Why not apply that to the digital space?
Exactly. I mean, especially since that's as more important than ever these days.
Yeah. I spend most of my existence in both of these worlds. Yeah.
Speaking of that and talking about existing in the digital space, one of the biggest transitions that we've had in the industry has been this migration away from having physical production spaces and like large studio spaces to having like multiple like freelancers and remote teams, sometimes spread out across the entire world, not just like in like your sound person in like West Hollywood and you're like VFX in Burbank. Like it's a global production world now. Tell me a little bit more about how you integrate collaboration into your workflow currently and kind of like what you're moving towards and forward now that you have the ability to like utilize some of the software with Synology.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, post-COVID, everybody worked remotely. But before that, for about 15 plus years, I was working remotely. It was a real struggle because most studios wouldn't accept that I would just work from home because people wanted to see you working and people didn't understand that. So post-COVID, it actually made it sense. And before all that, I was working remote. I was working with teams from across the world. I didn't really care where somebody was from. I looked at their talent and their work as that's the person I want to work with. And I don't care what time zone you're in, we'll make it work. So I was doing this for 15 plus, maybe 20 years or so. It just only seems to be a more like accepted thing post the pandemic, which has been nice. Weird byproduct of that potentially. So working remotely has been massive. And before, you've actually kind of showed me this thing. To be completely transparent, I'm not really a tech person, although I have to be. I'm almost by necessary, but that's about it. It probably doesn't seem like that because how deep I go, but if I rabbit hole into a task or a goal, I go all in, and that's just kind of how I saturate. That's why I do what I did with the file structures and clean everything up. Because if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it right. But before all that, I was using Dropbox. Before I was using all the redundancy and having the NAS, I was using the app Dropbox because it was allowing me to work on their cloud and then sharing files amongst my colleagues. Because most of what I do is a collaborative effort with a team of people that are across the world. But now with Synology and understanding the software, this is something I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into is just Synology Drive, and using this as a Dropbox replacement is really kind of super appealing to me because Dropbox is expensive, and it's just another thing that if I don't need it in my workflow, it could save me cash, and then at the same time, I can use my NAS and my backups as a potential hub, which is awesome. And so it's just a matter of understanding that language, employing it and deploying it through a project, robustly testing it and seeing what works and what doesn't, and then going from there and pushing it. So one thing I really didn't understand, I just thought it was just, it was a hardware. And then I realized there's this wonderful software that's attached to it as well. It's very, very strong and it works great. It's a Linux-based system, which is awesome. And that's a whole different thing that it's like almost like an added bonus that wasn't super aware of, which is really cool. And it's been something that I'm going to have to test more and see, and just see how it stacks up against the Dropbox for my working, and also just test it with a couple projects personally and see how it flows. And then, because to me, the tool that wins is the one that works. And then the one that works is the only one I use. And everything else just is not a part of my everyday. Yeah.
Well, that's really good strategy to take, is hyper focus on using one tool and maximizing its potential. Removes a lot of confusion in the process.
Yeah, that's the hope. Yeah. It's already hard to do the thing, so why add more frustration?
One of my favorite things that we get to do here at Synology is show that while we're able to be utilized as fast storage for both production and secondary storage, is that ability to share your data and consolidate it and like have an easy workflow. Because that's one of the things that I've found that communication with different like stakeholders in a project. So kind of for everybody else's benefit, when you're working with multiple different artists on a project, how do you streamline that communication and kind of like the concept of like having people work at the same time? What's your methodology there?
I use an app called Notion to run my productions for the most part, and it's almost like a Discord or something, like a global place for you to have notes and do those things. I did see that feature inside of Drive, which I thought was really interesting too. The ultimate goal, because a lot of times I'm directing teams, the ultimate goal is to communicate, and then director's main task is to release the talent and the power of your team and really get your team to see their own abilities and push them to the extreme. So that's really the key. So communication is paramount to that role. So yeah, right now I use Notion, and then usually just like Telegram or WhatsApp or whatever, these kind of things. That's all spread out. But I did see that there's these interesting things inside of Synology Drive. The real trick I find is just getting your team to align on where to communicate and using that as a place. But Notion has been kind of outside of all of these things. Notion is kind of my life operating system. It's the second brain. It's where I save everything. I put a lot of noise to this place, and it's also a thing that helps keep me actively accountable. That's a whole nother webinar.
Yeah.
And for a different company potentially, but it's the same kind of thing. It's using technology to actually help you as a user. But yeah, it all comes down to communication and the technology. Using the technology to communicate the goals is really the trick.
No, and you brought up an excellent thing that I hadn't considered bringing up in this, which is Synology Office, which is integrated into Synology Drive. There's documents and spreadsheets and presentations on there. So yeah, you can collaborate in real time in those documents with people. And you actually brought up something interesting that I haven't thought to mention to people in the industry when doing a lot of our demos is we actually have a program called Synology Chat. And it is...
Of course you do.
Of course. Yeah. You can just install it in the package center, and it's your own like custom local like chat server that's private to your machine. In fact, actually, as an organization, that's what we use. We don't use any of the other like Teams or like Slack or any of those other types of platforms, because we use all of our own software internally when we're doing things. And it's
so cool. Yeah,
we've been able to, like, this global company all operate on this same Synology chat server with all of our different coworkers, which is pretty fun. So a useful potential thing to look into, because then it's like you're also doing that extra privacy level. All of that is not even in an external service. It's like locally on the NAS.
Awesome. That's cool. It seems like the more you're doing this, it's like a Swiss Army knife, truly. It's something that I need to just spend some time to investigate. And then, like I said, robustly test it. The thing is, I got to figure out somebody that's outside of this, bringing them in, and then using this tool to actually create harmony of communication, because like I said, all I cared about is the task getting done and then it being saved with redundancy.
Yeah.
And I just asked that as the core thing. It's like the tidying up. Okay, is this sparking joy or not? This is the task, and understanding how this technology can be better used and how it can better help me, I suppose, is the trick. Yeah. So this is really cool. You're opening up a lot of interesting things that I just need to make. I'm going to make some notes tonight on Notion and just appoint some time to like investigate how this would work, how I can integrate it. What are the downsides? What are the upsides? What's working now? What doesn't? And then hopefully it makes it better.
Awesome. And actually, to that point, which I can give as a resource afterwards to all of the people here at the webinar, is we actually have a product site. We have a site that's called Synology Product Online Training, where we do big deep dive webinars on our products by one of our product managers. And we have that available as a resource that goes deep dives into a lot of these different things.
That's awesome. Do you they actively receive like feedback and updates and things like that. So there's a connection between the user and then the developer as well. Is that part of it?
When there's like a lot of feedback coming in from our users, like when we're working directly with them, like if we're going to events and talking with people, we will usually end up like handing it off to our product manager team. And then those do make it. We have actually started implementing some features and requests from our end users
Cool.
into some of the products that are coming out, which I'm very excited, but I can't talk about yet. But we have a lot of really cool things coming out towards the end of the year. So definitely everybody keep an eye on that. But speaking of all of those other features and functionalities that's currently on the table, let's talk about resiliency and data protection, because that's one of the big things that I always communicate with people, because while we love to get people started with our products to get everything centralized and located in one place, the problem is like now you have this super efficient system that you can collaborate and find everything everywhere, but now you have a single point of failure. The units, we tend to recommend people use RAID, which I think in other different meetings, RAID has been covered, but redundant array of disks basically means that your data is spread across a bunch of disks to make one big disk, and you can configure it so like one disk can die, you just pop in a new one and then fix it. So that makes data resilient, but it's not a backup. So why don't you talk about kind of the process of using our software to back up and then additionally protect that data beyond just a hardware failure?
Yeah, I have RAID set up, and then I have redundancy. So if one drive fails, I believe I'm using the Synology specific version, which you would know. I forget.
Synology hybrid RAID, yeah.
That's it. Yep. Yeah. So I have that, and outside of that, so I have, because I mentioned I use a lot of data. I think it's like 150 some odd terabytes of hard drives. So it's like, I don't know, 12 bays of 16 terabytes or something like that. It's a lot, because I knew that I was going to need it, and I also knew I was going to lose one drive to this protection aspect of it. Did all the calculations and figured out, okay, well, if each project is a terabyte or so, and then I have, I'm on 80 projects right now, so it's just stacking up. So I'm halfway through the space that I currently have. Outside of that, one of the real key things is I use the hyper backup, and I have a literal clone of my current NAS, which is the D1635S or something. I can't remember the names of it. Yeah, I'm also dyslexic, so like letters and numbers, they're like puzzle for me. So, but it's a 12 disk RAID NAS system that's really awesome, and that's where I have everything. Everything channels to it in 10 gig transfer, 10 gigabyte transfer speed, and so when I have a hyper backup, that whole unit is outside on another location connected. So I have it queued for like every night or at like 3 a.m., whatever's been changed here gets backed up there through the network, and it's out. It's awesome. I love it. And so when I'm working, it's just, I know that offsite that this is protected. Hopefully my house doesn't burn down, but if it does, I have an outside space for my digital stuff. All the important things is a literal clone. And, to any like user at this point, like let's say I would consider myself in this space a professional. So I take my data professional just like a studio would. So when you have that, you have to make sure you're caring for your asset. Albeit I'm working from home, it's still important. So it's like I'm kind of in between the artist and then the studio, and then how the studio works. And I'm also not trying to have like a server room. So it's just, that's how I found this solution. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. That'll hold me tight for the next 3 to 5 years potentially for this unit. And then the next big move, which was having a clone of that, is really the trick in getting that all set up. And it takes a long time to clone over that much data. I think actually right now with all my data, it's like 56 terabytes, which isn't too bad, all consolidated. And I think I have I think total with RAID, I have like 140 terabytes or so total. So I have another 2/3 to go, which is great. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to go too far to the end of that either. So by the time that happens, I'd have to figure out another solution, and that's like server racks, and that's a whole nother potentiality, which I don't look forward to. I'm just happy with this solution for now. Maybe at that point, I'll just start deleting old stuff. Yeah. But
I mean, oh, sorry.
no. That's kind of somewhat of the current solution right now, which seems to be working really good. It also takes a lot of weight off my mind. I have an offside non-locale that has a clone that's doing constant backups, so the mirror is the same. And now this stuff is good here, and just in case something goes bad and one drive can die, I can fix that and keep thing plugging through, basically.
Yeah, and that is ever more important these days because, let's face it, natural disasters aren't getting less over time, and they just seem to be increasing for multiple different reasons. So having that hardware backup, like both physically on site, off site, because you never know what's going to happen. And as well as I think we had talked about too, that we have, so like in hyper backup, you can also back up to our cloud storage space, which just integrates naturally. That's like an additional fee, of course, because it's an additional storage in the cloud like any other provider. Why don't we kind of button this up? What's the biggest takeaway you can share with everybody?
I'd say the real key with your data in general is to make sure it's tidy and clean and understand priorities with your data. And once you have that established, your data is now clean and organized, and you understand what's important and what isn't, prioritizing that. The secondary thing to that is be very respectful of keeping that safe. And then whatever measures that works for you, whether it's a RAID system or a backup system or an offsite like I have, I would say in my own opinion, the way I have mine is extremely robust. The thing that I want to add to it is using the software and trying to see if the software will work with what I do and how I do to replace current methods. So I'd say the most important thing is to understand your data, why you're saving what you're saving, where it goes, so you can instantly access it. That's a whole other topic and task. But if you're a digital based person like I am, then it's extremely important to be responsible about this kind of thing. And then on top of it, once you get everything clean and organized, then knowing where everything goes and then having a backup of it responsibly, so that you don't just have a slew of hard drives and your data's everywhere and it's a big mess. And if somebody steals that, it's a problem. There's all these kind of things. So try to plan for the worst and then work backwards from there, which is kind of an unfortunate way to think, but you have to think that way in order to make sure that whatever the asset you're making is actually going to be protected. And that's literally why I'm involved in all of this, because there's no solution for it that's better, in my opinion, that I found. And I did a deep dive, and this is why I'm here with you all. And I'm really happy to be a part of it, because it is a tool that it works. I only use tools that work and that are great, and everything else just simply doesn't get used. Not that it's not great, it just doesn't work for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out and talking with us and sharing your experience. And it's a pleasure working with you, and I hope to talk with you again soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to Synology and the entire team and the developers and the engineers. It's a fantastic product. I love having it. It's really great for me personally because it creates solitude of knowing that I have a backup and all these kind of things. So as a digital artist, a digital person, it's really great to have these things. And it works great. I've not had any issues with it, which is insane considering all the other things that I've had to deal with outside of this, which is great. So really appreciate it. Thank you for the amazing questions, and thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, everybody, I know there was a lot of questions about the software going on and everything, and that's great. I love to hear that because we have a lot of really cool things to talk about in terms of the actual platform itself. The kind of what we were talking about there is like the idea of getting all of those files into that one place so you can get it organized, which Ash covered very well. And And then, of course, collaboration. When you have a NAS in your own environment, like a studio office or anything like that, or even if you have like people doing like a production out in the field, and then you have one. In fact, one of the case studies we're going to talk about, they do that. They'll have people can all work off of the same unit at the same time. So you all have the one same shared folder that you're working out of, which is integral to making sure that nobody's doing extra work, having duplicate files. It's really huge. And of course, is data protection. Because I've lost files. I know everybody's lost files at some point. And if those files are not yours or they're part of $1 million project, I messed around for a long time without any insurance because I was just a solo Lancer, and that was not super smart. But I managed to be okay. So typically, what you want to have is like a 3-2-1 backup strategy. And what that means is you want to have 3 different copies of the data in 2 different types of media, and one of them needs to be off-site. I actually, when I went to school for audio engineering and production, one of our professors taught us the hard way because he would come into the Pro Tools rig in Studio A at least once a quarter and then just nuke everything off of it. So if you had your portfolio project on there from your multi-track session and you didn't make a backup, he was like, that's a lesson that you're going to learn now instead of later when someone's going to be extra mad about it. So yeah, consolidation. Yeah, we'll try and speed through this. But somebody did ask what a Synology is. It's basically a little server that you throw lots of disks into, and then we have our own little operating system on it that runs like a server. And we have lots of awesome free software packages that just come with the hardware, kind of in the same way that you'll get like the Apple work applications and all these other different things. When you buy a Mac, we have all of this built-in software as well that just comes with owning the device. For example, when we were talking about the remote, we actually have somebody who we work with, Echo Entertainment. They do X Games. They do World Series of Poker. They're out doing capturing those feeds, doing live clips and edits on the fly. And they just have a whole bunch of our like 8-bay units out in trucks, and they're just siphoning off of the feeds, sending it back to a remote location where then they have editors just remoting in through Jump Desk and then just working on that footage on the NASs that they're syncing to back at their own office. Also, there's Synology Drive, which we talked about, which allows you to access files anywhere on any platform. We have clients for Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, where you can access your files anywhere, collaboratively with Office type platforms. Let's see. We'll get here real quick. Collaboration, Matchsticks Productions. We've worked with them. We're gonna send out some resources with links to all of these case studies. I actually go into some more in-depth webinars talking and doing more detailed software demos. So we have those videos that we're going to send out as well. But yeah, the concept of working with remote editors where you have, this remote person has got to wait to download all of the files. This is a typical example of if you say you have like satellite offices and a primary main office, what you can do is you'll have the Drive Share Sync software that we use. We'll utilize that to have like this NAS that's in the satellite office, and now it is synchronizing to the primary unit. It's great because that means that changes on one machine and the other kind of like they synchronize back and forth. So it's like you're working on the same network, but you don't have to worry about transferring between computer to computer. The NASs are doing kind of that work as you're all working off of them at the same time. This is my personal NAS. I have a bunch of different files and folders. I have, Ableton, and I have all of my different assets and projects, demos, and all of my footage. And so for this project, I was actually working with Daphne, who's in the chat with us, and we kind of collaborated on the video edit for the interview. So I grabbed my feed in OBS, and Ash recorded on his side and then grabbed all of it. So I tossed those in Premiere and then synced it. And I realized that we didn't actually do, we didn't check to make sure what our FPS was. So I used Topaz to do some magic, some Topaz AI to adjust the frame rate, and then I synced those up in a timeline, and then I sent that off in Synology Drive to Daphne, and then Daphne was able to go through in Premiere and do. Let's see, let's find that file folder here. So yeah, let's find webinars. Yeah, so we popped in here, and I was able to like work on this project, and then able to send that to Daphne with Synology Drive. Let's pull in here. So if we were going to access Synology Drive, okay. So Synology Drive works in a bunch of different ways. It can look like a web interface. There's also an application that works here. So this allows me to have, right now, I actually have a bunch of files transferring that I have uploaded. And that's going from my machine to the NAS. Let's see. So if we go into our team folder here, we have my Synology projects folder, and then we have the LAPPG meeting. So this is on my NAS here. And I was able to save this, and then Daphne was able to grab that project and then open it and work on it. And then she saved it, sent it back over. There were some audio cut things that need to be adjusted. And then I also found out after that we had been in 720p. So I did my edits, sent that over to Daphne, take a look at. And when I say sent over, I just sent her a message saying, hey, I saved, go ahead and open it up and then take a look. Everything looked great. So then I did the up-res, and then everything was all in that same workplace. So now the other fun thing here is I can go into, on this guy, let's say we take this share sync folder. So this is what we were talking about with Matchstick, is I can turn this on. You can do version control as well, but we're not going to do it for this demo here. I'm just going to do a nice little quick demo. So I have this folder on here that's just called share sync for this demo. It's just an empty folder. And I'm going to go ahead and pop in onto my NAS here. And let's see. There we are, share sync. So I'm going to pull into my footage folder, and I'm just going to grab, classic SpongeBob 2 hours later. So I'm connected to my NAS right now over SMB Samba, so just over my network connection. I can use preview.
2 hours later.
Pop it up, and that's showing there. But that was on my NAS over my network connection. I'm using 10 gigs, so I'm able to edit directly off of my NAS. So I have that loaded in there. But now if I come in to that ShareSync folder on here, which folder are we? We have so many folders. Yes, if we go to ShareSync folder here, we can see that is now in that folder on the NAS in File Station. And I have another NAS in the office, my video toaster. If you're old like me, you will get that reference. But I can go in here and go to Drive Share Sync. And I'm going to go ahead and enable that folder. So I'm going to go in here and let's see. Don't want that one there. Of course, there we go. So we're going to turn on the Share Sync folder and then hit apply. So this wasn't synchronizing over to this NAS before, but I just went ahead and then synchronized it. And basically what it is, like attached to that folder on like the mother NAS, essentially. So now I can just go into that file folder structure here, and let's open up a new File Station window here. and we'll see their share sync. So this is in our offices, and I'm in Seattle, in Capitol Hill, and then this is in our office in Bellevue. And since this is a web playable format, I can actually just
2
play it
hours
in the browser
later.
from the Synology Drive interface. So it's pretty fun stuff. It's very versatile. And that's just kind of the surface of what you can do with Synology Drive. And yeah, it's very easy to collaborate that way and share files with everybody. BBC Media Action. We have a lot of large companies who are utilizing our products. So let me do a quick overview of snapshots and hyper backup. What hyper backup is what Ash was talking about. Hyper backup you can kind of consider like a LTO for drives, essentially, but it's like a software LTO because it is compressed, deduplicated, and versioned. And that can be attached to USB drives. You can use cloud storage for that, existing cloud storage. You can use an offsite Synology NAS, but it makes a nice little container that then you can go through with versions, and it's compressed and deduplicated, just much like tape, except a little bit more easier to manage than tape because you can expand it easily. We also have our own cloud storage that integrates directly with our NAS units called C2. That's an additional charge for that per terabyte that you're getting. It's like $6.99, I think, per terabyte. But that is utilizable for hyper backups. You can hyper backup to that, just integrate it into that interface, as well as hybrid share, which is kind of like take that shared folder, but now put it in the cloud. And kind of like how I was saying with Drive Share Sync, how you have the NAS to NAS connection with the mothership and then like the remote NAS. With hybrid share, you have a shared folder in the cloud, and now these NASs are connecting there. So if you're bringing on, you can just ship a remote editor like a 2-bay with SSDs in it, and then they can just boot it up, and then it's attached to this cloud that's already getting everything, which is pretty sick. So I will very quickly show you the most important thing that I like to show off to everybody in terms of our platform is there's a lot of really amazing solutions out there that you can do editing and production with and store all of your files. But one of the reasons why I feel like we should be a big contender in your list, especially when putting things together or using us as secondary storage to back up those existing, like your jellyfishes or your cloud stores or anything like that, having that second copy is also because on every single one of these folders, very specifically, I'll use my audio folder, all of my audio projects. Malware is such a huge problem right now. And it's something that I am terrified of, and I know most people are, because you could accidentally open the wrong PDF file and then boom, there goes all of your data and it's encrypted. What Snapshots does is it not only takes like a snapshot, like a literal point in time that you can go back to, kind of like time machine, and it only captures the changes. It not only does that, but we have the ability to do immutable snapshots. So on this folder here for audio, every time it takes a snapshot for a period of 1 day, it is unchangeable. So that means you can't overwrite it, you can't delete it, you can't even format the NAS if it has an immutable snapshot on it. So that data is protected from any malware attacks at all. So that's something that's just built in, and it's literally like 3 clicks to protect a folder from that type of damage. So Ash's words at the end here, plan for the worst and work backwards from there.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. And please thank Ash for us as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And make sure you check the past meetings on our YouTube channel. You should come check it out, subscribe, and then click the notification button so you will know when new videos are dropped. We have over 100 there. I think we have a new one coming out real soon. So be sure to check that out. And be sure to connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. And we are also on LinkedIn. And a huge thank you to our partners, OWC and Zeiss at the gold level, Synology at the silver level. And we have lots of wonderful supporting media and community partners that help us get the word out about LAPPG and make these meetings happen every month. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a good evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.